All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live event with myself, Superintendent Karen Gaborik, and it's been a while since we've done one of these, so that must mean we've got some new options and big changes coming, which if you've been watching the news, you know is true. So the purpose here today is to provide as much information as possible on what we know today, and we'll continue to get information out as the weeks progress. A great resource for information will be the school district website, so watch for new updates there. This this live event will also be posted on our website and on iTunes, or YouTube, sorry, on YouTube. Okay, so today I want to be really clear. The primary audience today is parents, guardians, families, students, if you're watching. I'm going to provide you with a lot of different info, and then we will go through questions in the time that we have remaining and answer those that we have information and answers for. And then if there are some that we don't yet have answers for, we'll definitely track all of those. And it's probably things we're thinking about, but just don't have finalized just yet. Everything that I'm gonna walk through today in terms of what the options are, a survey will be going out soon to families so that you can decide what you want to do. The surveys will stay open for quite a while. So if you're not quite sure after today what you want to do and you need time to think about it over the next week, as winter break comes, you'll have some time to do that. We do ask that if families are thinking about switching the learning model, your choice of learning models from whatever you've been doing this semester to doing something different second semester, please let the schools know as soon as possible so that everybody can plan accordingly. Staff, just a note to you, we'll have information coming out, of course, that's specific to staff. I'm going to do a live event, private live event in January, early January, that first week for staff, and I'll have Ivory McDaniel, the executive director of human relations, join me for that, and we'll be available for questions and things. So we're working with supervisors right now. Certainly if you have questions, don't hold them till January, send them to your supervisors, and then both human resources and our assistant superintendents meet with supervisors regularly and are working through, again, some of the details of what our shift to in-person school will mean for staff at every single level. Okay, so on this Monday, December 14th, the Board of Education made the decision to reopen schools starting on January 19th for those families who want that option. So the basic start dates are January 19th. The in-person option will begin for elementary. The next Monday, January 25th, the in-person option will begin for middle school. And then on February 1st, the in-person option will begin for high school. So if you think about it, we've basically had three options up to this point, right? We've had the remote blended, we've had e-learning, and we've had our best homeschool option. So the first option, that remote blended, is basically now becoming two options. So things to think about is that if you choose, if you want to be part of in-person school, it will look more like normal school. Again, it'll be school in a time of COVID, and I'll talk about mitigation plans that will still be in place. But it will look more like normal school. And the thing that families who are in that first option right now just need to think about is that if you want your child to stay remote for a while, there's going to be changes in what the remote students experience, because now once we begin the in-person option, many teachers are going to have students both in person in class and then remotely, right? So they'll be doing two different things at the same time. And what it's probably going to look like in a lot of cases is that the remote students will be watching the teacher teach the in-person class. So this will look different at different grade levels and at different schools. So again, that's not necessarily what it's going to be in every single classroom, in every single school, at every single grade level. There might be some variations on that theme, but in general, that's something you can be thinking about as you sort of think through your options. As schools get the numbers in, so this is why we need information from you, as schools get numbers in and they know what parent choices are going to be, between now and the beginning of the semester, between now and when the in-person option starts, then they can make their staffing choices. So again, if you definitely know, let them know. If you need a little time to think about it, please do so, but let schools know as soon as possible. So if you're going to switch sort of models, if you're thinking about switching, so I'm just going to walk through each of the options that we have right now. If you are currently in the remote blended option, you're basically all set, right? You're enrolled in school, you're good to go. The time period from January 6th to the 15th, schools will still be remote. The students who can continue to access schools are those students who are accessing schools right now for academic supports. So if your child, this second quarter has been accessing school 1 day a week, a couple days a week, whatever the model's been, they can still do that. And it'll be the exact same model as it is now for those couple weeks. So you're kind of set. Things won't change too much for you for that, the first couple weeks. Then starting on January 19th for elementary, and then remember it's the 25th for middle school and February 1st for high school, the blended remote students can move to the in-person option. And those who do decide to go in person on those dates will be with their primary teacher. So again, that looks different at elementary. Middle school has multiple teachers, high school have multiple teachers, but they'll be with their primary teacher. And then just again, recognizing that those who choose to stay remote it may or may not be with exactly the same teacher, depending on what the numbers are at each school and how schools structure their staffing. So in some cases, they'll be watching the teacher teach. At an elementary school, they may have a teacher who does some, perhaps a couple grade levels remote. And so again, your school will be able to let you know what that will look like as they get more information about the choices that parents are making. If you are in e-learning right now, e-learning is still a great option for anybody. You don't have to be in e-learning right now. If you're thinking about that you want to do e-learning next semester, you can sign up for that. This is a great option for parents who want to wait for a while. They're just not ready for in-person remote yet. They want to wait, and so e-learning is a great option. If you're going to continue in e-learning, again, it's let your schools know so they know what they can count on. If you want to switch to e-learning, if you're doing something different and you'd like to switch to e-learning, let schools know as soon as possible. And then families who have students in e-learning and want to switch to the in-person option, we're asking you to make that switch right at the beginning of the third quarter of the second semester, because it will be much easier for you to start in that remote model. And then again, as the elementary, middle school, high school start dates start, it'll be a much easier shift for you to make. It will not necessarily be an easy shift if you stay in e-learning and then on January 19th want to switch to in-person. So again, really encouraging you to, if you want that in-person remote option, start with that at semester. You'll be in that remote model for a couple weeks, depending on what grade level you're at. But then as soon as we're ready to go to in-person, it'll be an easier shift for you. If families want to wait longer than sort of that January timeframe to switch to in-person and you're in e-learning right now, then we recommend that you decide a good choice would be stay in e-learning for third quarter, and then make the switch for fourth quarter. So something to think about there. You want to get back to in-person. You're not quite ready in January or by February 1st, but you would like your child to get there. Maybe for fourth quarter, then make that switch at fourth quarter. Okay, students who are in our BEST homeschool program, kind of the same thing. If you want to stay in BEST, please let BEST know so they can get an idea of their numbers. You can also switch to e-learning if you want, again, if you want that e-learning model, that's a good option for some families. And then if you want to switch to in-person, again, we recommend that BEST do it at the beginning of the semester. So you'll be remote for a little while and then you can switch to in-person. If BEST families want to wait longer than that January timeframe, right, to make the shift, we recommend you wait until third quarter. So you kind of need to decide if you're in BEST, do I want to do it now, like right at the beginning of the semester, or do I want to do it at the quarter? And this is really important for high school kids because, we have to be really careful that that we're able to align schedules and credits and things like that. So again, if you have questions, contact BEST, contact your home school, and they can kind of walk through some of the details and options with you. If you are a family who left our district and went to a different homeschool program, you want to come back, or if you're brand new, maybe you're a parent of a kindergartner and you just decided, I'm just going to keep them home until things kind of settle down. We're going to do some specific outreach to all of our families who either just haven't enrolled in the district yet or left the district. Again, if you want that in-person option, we recommend that you enroll at the beginning of the semester. You'll be remote for a little while, and then you'll switch to in-person when the time comes. Again, if you want one of our other options, if you'd like to do e-learning, if you'd like to do our District Best program, we can get you set up and ready to go for those as well. So activities. Clubs and activities, co-curricular events, things like that. Schools will start those when they have the ability and capacity to do so. So I'll just use robotics as an example. Maybe your child, normally would have been involved in robotics clubs. So, once the staff who normally run robotics are ready to get that rolling, then they'll do that. So again, that'll be pretty school specific, and it'll kind of depend on what the activity is and how that looks at each school. Some of those big district-wide events like science fair and spelling bee and things like that, some of those will very likely remain remote. And so we might still have our big events, district-wide events might still be virtual. So again, we'll let folks know as those decisions are made, depending on, again, sort of the size of those events and whatever planning's been done up to this point and where we want to go from there. High school sports. So if you're involved in sports, you probably know these dates already. Cross-country skiing, and these dates are set by ASA, so these are statewide dates. These aren't necessarily unique to Fairbanks. So cross-country skiing has already started, so they're in motion. Hockey starts January 4th. Basketball and cheerleading start January 11th, and then esports starts February 1st. The one change that we'll see with sports is that we will allow a limited number of spectators in buildings. So like for basketball in the gymnasiums, it'll be based on 6 feet of social distancing, and all masks will be required for everybody. So it'll probably be very much like football. If you experienced football, each student was able to invite a certain number of family members to come. It'll just be based on the capacity of those gyms and those venues. Graduations, we'll have to wait and see what happens with graduations, because right now, remember, the Carlson Center is being used as overflow, right, to extend the capacity of the hospital. So that's the current status of the Carlson Center. Probably, and I'm going to guess by spring break, we will make a decision. We'll need to make a decision so everybody can, of course, make plans. And so a lot of it will depend on what the community transmission rates are, because we're thinking about can we have large crowds or not? What's the situation with the Carlson Center? What's the situation at each particular high school? And so again, stay in contact, seniors and families of seniors, with your schools, and we're going to give ourselves a little bit of time before we make that decision. But again, by spring break, we probably need to have that decision made. So after school programs. So each after school program will look at each site, determine how best to run after school programs if they're able to. Some of that will depend on transportation and schedules and things like that. So again, if your child normally would have been involved in after school program, if it was available, stay in touch with your school and they'll let you know what that will look like. Here's just some general things for schools. All schools at every grade level are going to continue with the current start and end times. Now, if you've been involved in e-learning or BEST aren't sure what those are, we have those on our website so you can look at those. They are different than they would look at a normal school year. And so it's a shorter day in every case, with some extra time for teachers to have some planning this year. So look at those school schedules, and that will help you with some of your decision making around this. Transportation will run, and the transportation schedule, the bus schedule, has already been built to meet all the school start and end times that we have right now. So also we'll have communication from our transportation office in terms of letting folks know if you haven't really thought about riding the bus, but you're thinking, okay, I want my child to ride the bus. We'll have a mechanism for families to let first student in our transportation office know that you'll need transportation once the in-person dates begin. High schools, this is important. High schools will continue with 3 classes per day, and they will stay on the quarter system. So as we worked with principals and our teaching and learning department, that was the best way for us to continue second semester, since that's the model that we've been using first semester. So if you have any questions, again, if you haven't, if you've been doing e-learning or BEST and you have questions about what that might mean for your student, again, contact the school, contact BEST if you've been involved with BEST, they can help you with that, and your e-learning teachers. So you have lots of places that you can go and start to think through if you want to make a switch. In terms of mitigation plans for COVID, actually 3 periods per day at the high school will help mitigate at the high school. So that will be helpful. Hopefully, you know, we're always trying to reduce the number of close contacts that might occur if we have a positive case. So that will help with that. In every single school, masks will be required of everybody. So masks for students, masks for teachers, masks for all staff, masks for visitors will probably still be very limited, and each school will work through that, but masks for any visitors that we might have. That made me think of something, masks. Oh, and so we have lots of masks available. So families, if you're, you know, you're worried that your student just doesn't have enough, or maybe they forget it on the way to school, we have lots of masks available, and we'll make sure that that students, you know, have that and can grab a mask on their way in. The same things that applied at the beginning. If you tuned into some of our Facebook Lives in August, you know, there are some special needs students for whom a mask is not appropriate. Many of those students, if parents chose, are accessing schools right now and receiving some of those services. So if you're the parent of a special needs student and are wondering again what the program might look like and masks and things like that, definitely contact the school or your child's teacher, and they can share with you what we've been doing and how that's working. Again, some of our youngest kids, we know, you know, it's a different situation with masks, and it, you know, it'll just look differently at, you know, in a kindergarten class than it would, you know, for a high school senior. So we know that lots of kids have, you know, right along with their families, are used to wearing masks when they go into businesses and things. So it might be different in person, you know, wearing a mask all day, and we'll just, you know, all of our staff will work with kids to help them get to that place, you know, where they're comfortable with wearing masks, again, as appropriate for if there's special needs or not, or, you know, developmentally. Let's see. Frequent hand washing, right? We'll encourage frequent hand washing, of course, at the elementary schools. I'm sure they'll help facilitate frequent hand washing. Social distancing we will implement social distancing to the degree possible, and that will be based on how many students choose the in-person option. So, you know, if we have 10 students who choose to be in person in a 3rd grade classroom, we'll probably be able to do social distancing really well. If there's more, then we teachers and schools will do social distancing, implement social distancing to the best of their ability. The pod sizes, the cohort sizes, again, we will implement that and try to keep fairly tight pods. Students will be with their primary teacher. So basically the size of a pod will be whatever the class size is. So again, if there's 10 students who choose the in-person option for 3rd grade in a particular school with that teacher, then that's the pod size. If there's more, then it'll be a bigger pod size. And again, the commitment, the interest of the school board is that kids be with their primary teacher and not be receiving instruction you know, from a teacher maybe who's rotating through groups. So they will be with their primary teacher if you choose the in-person option. And of course, there's normal times when you're, you know, with support staff for different things. So so some of those normal pieces will still be in place. But if you want your 3rd grade teacher, then, you know, that's who your child's going to be with. What about school closures? So what, you know, how will that work? And so school closures will work much like they're happening in Mat-Su right now. And so what happens in the Matanuska Susitna School District is if there's a positive case, then the school team sort of quickly ascertains, you know, what the contact group might be. So let's say it's one classroom. That whole class then, goes home and does not come back the next day. And they do the contact tracing. We have a COVID team, and of course we'll be working with school nurses and school staff, and they'll do the contact tracing, and they'll bring back as many kids as they can, to school who maybe weren't close contacts. And then the students and staff who were close contacts will need to stay home for the quarantine period. So it could be a classroom. It could be a section of the school. It's possible if, it could be an entire school. Some of what we've seen with kids in schools now, it kind of depends on the movement of students and staff in the building. It depends sometimes if somebody is asymptomatic and didn't know that they were positive, and then we find out a couple days later, that has a larger impact than, if somebody realizes right away that they're symptomatic and, are able to get tested and things like that. So it's really case by case basis. So we'll be as precise as we possibly can in terms of, how many, who is, quarantined and for how long. But initially it'll probably be, okay, this whole group needs to go home right now, and then we'll bring students back, whoever we can bring back right away who wasn't a close contact, and others will stay home. Let's see. Quarantine for close contacts. So we have lots of information on our website about how quarantines work. So check out the district website. There's a 7-day option for quarantine and a 10-day option for quarantine. And that has to do with whether or not a person gets tested or is able to get tested, gets test results back, that kind of thing. So, and then also, the usual mitigation for somebody who's showing symptoms, again, students or staff who have symptoms, there's isolation periods for anybody who is sick. There's 4 different possibilities for that in terms of what the length of time looks like and how that works. So it depends, if you don't get a test, there's, that looks different than if you have test results pending, you have a positive test or a negative test. So we have lots of information on our website and have been utilizing those mitigation protocols all year up to this point. So I think, let's see. I think I'll pause there now and answer questions specifically about all of this. And then in the end, remind me, Yumi, and I want to talk about technology department and something we've got rolling out. So I'll watch the time and be sure I have an announcement for that. So, okay, so I'm reading from across the room, questions that have come in. Clarify, yes, so elementary, middle, and high school. So if you choose the in-person option, it will be 5 days a week at every single grade level. So starting on those particular start dates. So the 19th, January 19th for elementary, January 25th for middle school, and February 1st for high school. Will parents be required to sign a release form like we had to do with sports if we agree to send our children back to school? No. So sports are optional and have basically a different set of rules than, but public education is open to anybody who wants to access public education. And of course, we provide, right, that service to the community. So no, there won't be any waivers or things that you have to sign. And if you have questions about the mitigation efforts, you can find the general guidelines, well, they're pretty specific. You can find the guidelines on the website. And if you're wondering what that's looking like at your child's school, again, I'd contact the school and just, ask the specific questions you have, like, what will this look like for my child in class or at lunch or things like that. Will parents be able to switch between in-person and remote on a daily basis? So we are hoping that doesn't happen. Again, we recognize, again, if transmission rates get high and parents are just not comfortable going back and forth, so it's there. It'd be kind of inconsistent for a student. And we just want folks to remember that if your child is staying remote or you need a remote option, it'll look different than it is right now, because in many cases teachers they'll be filming themselves teaching the students who are in class. So it'll definitely have a different feel to it. For students who are quarantining, again, for a period of time, if they were close contact, that will be great. That'll be a great option. So, they won't lose any instruction during the time that they're quarantined. Will families know that going back to in-person learning will be just like remote learning, but kids will be physically in the building, but will they be sitting in front of a computer all day? No. So in person, again, the teacher is going to need to be filming themselves in many cases. So, they may not have the same range of, motion that they would under normal circumstances. And schools and grade levels, are going to work that out sort of in ways that make sense for them at each site. But, and I lost what the second part of that question was. Let's see. Sorry about this. Nope, I lost it. Anyway, if I forgot to answer something there, I'm sorry. Yeah, just leave them up for a little bit. Okay, are there ideas in place for how teachers will possibly manage online and in-person at the same time? Yeah, so each teacher will, we know we have some teachers now who have been doing a little bit of that because they've had some students accessing supports in their buildings. We've certainly heard from teachers who want to practice more in January and do some of that. So teachers will, well, again, it'll just depend on the class, the grade level sort of decisions that are made at the school. A lot of what it looks like will depend on how many students choose the in-person option. So yeah, so we'll just, our goal will be to support all of our staff in terms of making all of these options work for families. Let's see, will staff and students be screened daily prior to entering the building? So we are not going to be standing at the doors doing temperature checks, but we do have the daily screening checklist on our website. And we've been all up to this entire time been asking families to do those checks at home. And essentially, if your child is sick, please don't send them to school. If they become sick at school or if they arrive to school sick, we will have to work with the school nurses and administration, isolate them, and then get them home as soon as possible. So please don't send kids to school if they're sick. And again, we recognize some kids get sick, during the day, and nurses and school principals will work with families to, get them home as soon as they can. When best families decide to enter in-person learning, will we closely adhere to the class numbers in order to follow CDC guidelines, or we'll potentially have huge classes? Well, so we're going to have most of our teachers have already been in the buildings, right? We do have some with doing e-learning and telework agreements. So the class size will be what it is depending on how many students show up. So we don't anticipate that everybody will come. So let's say let's say a fourth grade class, if we'd started normal in the school year, was going to be 26. If every single one of those fourth graders for that teacher decides to come back to school in person, then it'll be 26, and we'll do the best we can with social distancing. But we know that, again, families, not everybody's ready to come back right now. And so, we anticipate smaller numbers than that. So social distancing, it'll be math, right? I mean, how many kids are in the room, and how far apart can we spread the desks? And schools have already done a lot of work in terms of emptying classrooms and, getting a lot of furniture out of the room so that they did have more space to spread out. So, but that'll really just depend on how many students decide that that's the choice, how many families want that choice. And again, if the community transmission rates, reduce and things get better, we anticipate that, more families will be interested in the in-person options. So, yeah, so we'll just have to see how that evolves over the course of the semester. Will teachers teach from home if they're quarantined, or will students have substitute teachers? So we still have to work that out. A substitute teacher is, probably our best option. It's not necessarily, not every classroom has the technology for a teacher to teach from home. And here's the other thing I think people don't maybe understand is we don't have enough support staff, and it's probably not necessarily an appropriate decision to make either on any kind of long-term basis to say, well, there'll be an aide in the classroom while the teacher is out. So we hope we can get subs. And then if we can't get a sub for a teacher, then each school will work with their staff and do the best they can to cover classes while teachers are remote. Oh, and that's what I was starting to say is, we have paraprofessionals and classroom aides, many of them who are very specific to special education. They provide, extra services for special education students, but we don't have regular education aides that, you can just drop into classrooms whenever teachers are out. And again, that wouldn't be an appropriate, choice necessarily anyway, except in a, sort of a, very limited, unexpected emergency option. So we have our kindergarten classroom aides who work with those teachers, of course. But so we'll just have to take each, quarantine or absence on a case-by-case basis and do the best we can. If my child returns, will he be recorded during the day to meet remote learning needs? Oh, so in terms of, yeah. So we have some pretty specific guidelines for teachers around FERPA and privacy protections and recordings. So we will continue to follow those guidelines. And what we're anticipating, again, it'll depend, but we'll be sure teachers are aware that, it's okay to record you. It's not okay to record the rest of your class. So those will be things that they'll have to be, thinking through and working through. So and thanks for that reminder. We've sent lots of guidelines to teachers about that this semester, and we'll be sure to get that out again. Will shuttle buses be added again? Yes. So you're talking like between Lathrop and Hutchinson High School and things like that, I'm guessing. So yes. So if and so I'm going to say yes, except again at the high school level on the 3-quarter, the 3-class option, we'll have to look carefully at what that means in terms of, Lathrop students going to Hutch and things like that. So our intent is to have transportation for everybody who needs transportation. But I don't know that the high schools even have had a chance yet to really think about, okay, if kids would have been going to Hutch, what will their schedule look like for spring semester? So more details on that to come. Will devices travel back and forth with students? Yes, so that's our recommendation. Again, and we were gearing up for that right at the beginning of fall semester, so that every student had a device and it could go back and forth, again, as appropriate at each grade level, so that, if we have some quarantine situations or things like that, that kids can continue, to access instruction and don't necessarily lose 7 days or 14 days, or just kind of depending on, what their situation is. Are charter schools required to follow the same plan? So charter schools have the option by state statute to determine their own schedule. And so I know each charter, in fact, I think the final plans are coming in today. And so I'll be looking at those. They do have an option to do a different schedule. So, and I haven't seen them honestly to know what they're planning. Charter schools have been functioning differently already this semester than, many of our other schools. And I believe in almost every case, I'm pretty positive this is true, the academic policy committees at the charter schools have been very involved in those decisions. So, each charter school is making that decision as a school community. Will kids have lockers, or will they be required to carry their daily items? At this point, I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to write that down and be sure that the schools that do have lockers, families will know whether or not kids will have the option to lockers. So we just hadn't thought about, we were gearing up for that in August when we thought, we'd have more students back sooner. And I just haven't even seen what those mitigation plans look like yet for this new phase in. So we'll be sure we get answers to everybody. How will passing times and lunches work in upper grades? Any mitigation? So again, I think schools are going to do the best they can to mitigate this. I would recommend that. So some of it will depend on numbers, right? How many students show up. At the high school level, again, the intent of the board is that kids be with their primary teachers. So right, there will be movement between classes and there will be lunch periods. I know all, if not most if not all of the high schools and some of the middle schools too are looking at multiple lunches to try to break that up if they didn't already have multiple lunches. So they'll do the best they can, but those unstructured times are the ones where there's the highest potential for mixing. So that again is just something I think parents need to think about when they're deciding on whether or not to send their children back to school. So if you're wondering, again, is my school going to have 2 lunches? Are they going to have one-way hallways? Like, how does that work? Your school can get that information to you. How will pods work in high school with all different classes? Exactly, right? So the pods are the class size and kids are moving class to class. So that's something, if you're thinking about an in-person option, this is what you need to be aware of. So, I mean, students will be moving class to class, and a pod is, that class for that time period. And then it's, another class for another time period. Okay, let's see. Students that are in person, if they are sent home, will they still do remote learning during quarantine? Yeah, that's again, the nice thing about having that remote option available, so that students who do need to quarantine can continue with their instruction and keep up. How will recess be handled? That'll be different at each elementary school. I know they had plans to, have sort of staggered recess times and, make sure that there was, kind of like lunch, right? Staggered lunches, try to limit the number of students who are at recess at any one time. So, so schools are looking at that again in terms of their schedules and how that'll work. Will classroom teachers get vaccinated before they are required to do in-person teaching? So the Commissioner of Education and also Dr. Zink mentioned this last week at when she visited with the school board, that vaccinations will not, and actually my understanding right now is that they cannot be mandated for staff. And it's just the way, it has to do with the way the vaccine was developed. And so I have not heard any differently that vaccines can be mandated. So the short answer right now is no, there won't be mandatory vaccines for any of our educators or students. And so if that changes, that direction would come from the Department of Health and Social Services. And again, I haven't heard that that's the case, but if it changes, we'll let folks know. What about the free lunch program that has been in place? Do we need to add money to our kids' account? I'm going to put that on hold right now because I know that Nutrition Services is working on this one. So we'll put that as a question that we need to be sure and let folks know about. Will middle school kids move to classes or will their teachers rotate? So again, my understanding is what the middle schools are working on is that the kids will move to classes and they'll be with their teacher in their classroom so that there will be movement. If that's different at a particular middle school, then again, those principals will get that information out to you. If the transmission rates get too high, are the schools going to go strictly back to remote learning? So I'll say, based on the board action from Monday, the answer to that is no. Of course, the school board could always meet and make a different decision. But right now, we're going to begin in person starting on January 19th and continue with that. But the Board of Education always has the option to get together and make a different decision. Let's see, will the schools on the military bases look different than the ones off base? At this time, no. At this time, they will be functioning in similar ways as to those off base and off post. And I'm just waiting, sorry, I'm just waiting to see what other questions pop up here. Will elementary students go to gym, music class, etc.? Yes, so right now, that is the plan, that those electives and specials and things will be available to elementary school students. And we're working on the next question.
Will hours return to normal?
Will school hours return to normal? No, so school hours are going to stay, the current start and end times are going to stay like they are for all of second semester. And so if you've been, in the remote blended option, you might be familiar with those. If not, if you've been in e-learning or BEST, be sure to look on probably on your school website, but also on the district website, and you can find those. What are the main advantages or disadvantages of in-person versus blended learning from home? Again, there's so many family choices involved with that. In person, if you want your child to be in school, they'll be with their primary teacher. And again, that looks, different at different grade levels. meaning at the high school, there's, kids have multiple teachers, and so they'll be with their teachers in person. So that certainly has advantages. If we have a quarantine situation, then the remote option is there for students who can keep up with instruction. If a family is just not quite ready, by the January 19th or 25th or February 1st deadline, it would give you an opportunity maybe to wait even a little bit longer before you send your child back. So I think a lot of that will be based on, family preferences and choice. Let's see. Will we be opening up robust summer school options? Yeah, so definitely we've done had a lot of discussion about summer school and what we need to do to help, any students who, we need to provide extra supports to during the summer. I've already received a survey from some legislators at the state level who are interested in allocating funding specifically for summer schools across the state to help out with that. So certainly, with the resources that we have locally, we'll do everything we can to provide summer school options, robust, as the word was, summer school options. And then if there's additional money from the state level, that would be, of course, super helpful to every district in the state. Can the district lobby so teachers might get on the list of frontline workers and so they can get vaccinated sooner and be better protected? So I would say the Department of Health and Social Services is very aware of that teachers need to be near the top of the list. My understanding is that they're at tier 2. And so right now in tier 1, it's frontline, right? Healthcare workers. In fact, I just got a text, some school nurses in some districts are getting vaccinated right now already. Of course, folks in nursing homes and, sort of self-contained facilities. But then when the second tier starts, which, again, things are moving pretty quickly, so it might be even sooner than we, thought. When that second tier starts, educators are, near the top of that list. And some have asked me, well, what will that look like in the district? So, of course, we'll want the frontline educators who are working with kids every day to, have the ability to get vaccinated as soon as possible. So we have a great relationship with public health and with Foundation Health Partners. And so we'll probably, again, if public health needs us to have vaccination clinics, in our schools, we did a flu shot clinic that worked really well. Families scheduled their times and it was quick. It was really quick and easy. So we'll definitely work with them as soon as we're able to be a part of the vaccination process. We will definitely engage in that. If my kindergarten age child tests positive, but my second grade child does not, will both classes have to quarantine? And so not necessarily. Again, it's all about who the close contacts are. And so close contacts are somebody who's been in close contact, within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes or more, in close contact with somebody who is positive. And so, again, we've got a COVID team and a school team that's got a pretty refined process and does close contact tracing pretty quickly. And so again, we might initially send a whole group of kids home. Like in that scenario, maybe we send both the kindergarten class and the second grade class home, but then we're able to, bring back as many kids as possible as we figure out exactly who those close contacts were and not. Public health, excuse me, we do the contact tracing for our staff and students in the district. Public health takes care of contact tracing, although their resources have been limited, but they handle the contact tracing, in the community. Let's see, it sounded like charter magnet schools may get to choose to follow CDC guidelines and may not open in the red. Okay, so you have to be really careful. Charter schools do get to choose their own schedule as per state statute, so they can determine if they're going to open and to what degree. That is not true of magnet schools. So magnet schools are part of our district. So so Barnett, for example, is a magnet school. And so Barnett will be opening according to those dates. In fact, for Barnett, we consider the whole school an elementary school when we do these sort of scheduling things. So they would be on that first date, January 19th. Hutchinson High School is, a school of choice, but it's not a charter school. And so their opening date for in-person would be February 1st. What are the options to let 11th graders take classes at UAF? We actually have lots of options for students to take university classes. So I would encourage you again to contact your school counselor if you're interested in those. If you're talking specifically about North Star College, our new middle college, this year it's only open to seniors and all those spots are filled. We had 40 spots this first year. And so, yeah, so that's where we're at this year. We certainly want to grow that program. We'll see if we're able to do so within the constraints of budget. Will there be PE classes? And if so, how will PE classes work? So the answer to that is yes. How they will work, again, PE teachers have done a lot of work on, already, talking about how mitigation, social distancing, cleaning equipment and things like that will work for in-person instruction. And so the best place to get that information would be from the specific PE teachers at your child's school. Is there enough support staff, or is there enough staff to support in-person blended and e-learning programs? So, staffing will follow kids. And so it well could be that we'll be moving some e-learning teachers to in-person, depending on what those numbers look like. And again, that might be an evolving situation. If we start fairly small now, but, maybe like at the beginning of fourth quarter, we have more students choosing the in-person option and fewer students choosing e-learning, then we may be moving some teachers to, from the e-learning back to in-person. How will schools with passing classes be able to do contact tracing? Will the whole school close? Yeah, that's where it gets tricky. I mean, that's absolutely the issue. So as I think about it, I think you're gonna have to, how long was the passing period? What did that look like? Lunch is another situation that's challenging. So those are the unstructured times that are the most difficult. If you heard the colonels talk during the board meeting this week, they said, their experience on the installations is, during meal times and things like that, where masks are off and people are together, even if they're spread out, they're together in places. I mean, that's where they're seeing transmission occur. So that will be the same for us. And again, so that may weigh into a family's decision about whether or not you want to send your child to in-person, especially at the high school level and the middle school level, or if you want to just wait for a while. At the elementary, we'll be able to control that a little better. And so again, if those specific plans, we can have school principals put those up on the website so you can see what that will look like at the elementary level. Are you extending the last day to school to make up for school closure days, both to weather and lost days of schooling? Okay, so keep that down. Yeah. So we do need to extend the day for the weather day, and we'll come out with some communication regarding that. So we do have to make up that day. On every school calendar, I don't know if you've noticed on our school calendars, there's usually 3 days that are already indicated for weather makeup days if we need them. And so, we'll use one of those days for the weather day. We won't be extending school for anything that's happened as a result of e-learning or technology. The Commissioner of Education approved the calendar that we do have. And so, and that was with the understanding that, we had the remote blended, we had e-learning, and we had BEST. And so, so our school calendar was approved knowing that those were the options that families had. Let's see, what do you move down to? Is there a way for families to find out projected class size so they can know? Yes, so this is so the sooner families let us know the choices they're going to make, the sooner we're going to know what those numbers look like. And again, I anticipate it'll be fluid, right? So families may say, right now in January, I'm just not quite there yet. I want to give it more time. And so, yes, so we'll have numbers available to the best of our ability based on the information parents give us about the choices they're going to make. And then if you're a parent that's thinking, I just want to hold back a little bit, maybe, wait a little bit longer, again, you could just stay in contact with your school and say, I'm just going to keep using third grade. What's this third grade class look like? And the point at which you're comfortable and you decide to send your child to school, then, work with the school to do that. For middle schools and high schools, why wouldn't we have the alternate daily schedule with cohorts going to 2 to 3 days per week, keep the number of children in schools lower, because that's the decision that the Board of Education made. They made a very specific decision about wanting to open schools and to have it as close to normal as possible, recognizing that again, there's some things, even with 5 days a week and regular classes, that there's still some things that won't be quite normal, but as close to normal as possible. So that was their very specific decision. When will the survey be sent out for parents? So I'm hoping we'll get it out. I think it's almost ready now. We're going to send it out. Again, I don't want to overspeak. If it's not Friday, it might be Monday, but within the next couple days. And then we're just going to leave it open. Again, it's not, you won't be pressed to like make a decision within 2 or 3 days. If you want to think about it over break a little bit, if you're going to make a switch and you could let us know by the beginning of the semester, that'd be great. And even letting schools know that, say, hey, I might not be quite ready for this now, but just know I'm thinking about it for fourth quarter. I mean, that would be great information for schools. So as much information you can give them, as soon as you can give it to them, then everybody else who's trying to plan, us with staffing and families, thinking about their choices, will be able to, be able to move forward. What time do we have? Okay, I just need a little bit of time at the end for the technology piece. When will this, we did the survey. Yeah. What else do we have? I've heard no subs available. So will kids just be sent home, or where would they go? Yeah, so because we haven't needed a lot of subs, right? We don't have a lot in the pool. We'll start recruiting, of course. We've got a core group of subs who've been working with us, but we'll definitely start recruiting more. I don't know that kids would just be sent home, but then the question is, where would they go if a teacher's sick? Or absent or whatever. We'll have to work that out in each school and figure out what that looks like. So. Okay, I think it sounds like we are, now there may be questions we didn't get to. We're saving all of these questions. We're on our website, we're gonna launch, there's gonna be a newsletter that's gonna come out tomorrow that has all the options and the survey link and all of this information available. And then what was I gonna say after that? So you can access the survey. Oh, and we're gonna, as part of that, we'll have a list of FAQs. So we've developed a list of FAQs, and then we'll take all the questions we had today. And if there's things that just, we weren't able to answer today, or questions we weren't able to get to, we will add those to it. And then just a reminder to staff, if you didn't hear me right at the beginning, we're gonna do a staff live event, also just for staff. And I'll have Ivory McDaniel, the executive director of human resources, with me to answer questions that staff might have. But staff, again, if you have questions, be sure to ask your supervisor, and we'll get those to the human resources department. And, we don't want to wait until January to, if you have a specific question about your particular needs. So we want to work on those right away. Okay, let's see. So from the technology department, just completely different piece of information, but something I wanted to share with you. The technology department is introducing an exciting new service called Securely Home. So this is a parent portal that allows for better visibility and control over online activities when using district issued devices. So it's a great tool, which will be very helpful to parents and guardians, especially if you want to keep close track of, where your student's going, how they're using their device, what they're doing online. And again, it will be with district devices that it works. So parents will be receiving an email from the district next week with more information and a link. And it's something you can opt into. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but if you'd like to, you can opt in. Our executive director of technology has a student of his own in our school, and I think he's been on his own child has been, he's been telling us how he's been working through this, and he says it's really a great tool. So if you have questions, of course, we'll send some information and the link in the newsletter. There's a preview to how it works. So anyway, a new tool for parents. All right, we're basically at the end of the hour. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. We will post this. If you know folks who didn't have a chance to watch it today, we'll post this, and we'll continue. Lots of information coming out from us, right? So a newsletter tomorrow, lots more information. And basically, let us know what you need to help you make the decisions you need to make. And again, just as COVID has been this entire year, right, since March, every week it's different and new, right? And so we will just continue to adjust and provide the best services we can to families and students based on whatever options, make the most sense for you and your kids and your family. So Yep. So we look forward to continuing to work with you. I hope everybody has a nice winter break and can just, take a little bit of time off. And then we will hit the ground running for students, it'll be January 6th, right? So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. And look forward to seeing how this all rolls out next semester.